Welcome to episode 115 of Trek Live. In this episode, we're going to be talking Trek romances because it was so close to Valentine's Day here in the States and kind of around the world that we thought it would be fun to do some Star Trek romance related content. So, how you doing this morning, Bill?
Doing well. Looking forward to this. We have a Star Trek filled day today. We're going to be doing course heading as well a little later on. So looking forward to both. And yeah, what about? Do you want to? I'm getting ahead of myself. Are you thinking? Where are you with your rewatch?
Okay, yeah, let's jump into the rewatch really quick before I get into. Sorry, I'm trying to get the episode number here. So I watched my typical 2 episodes this week, episode 16 and 17. The Gangsters of Triskelion and A Piece of the Action.
Fun ones.
Two very fun episodes, I would say. Bill has it right. Let's start with Gangsters.
Sure.
It was fun. It was kind of cheesy at some points,
Mm-hmm.
but when I think of the stereotypical how people view Captain Kirk, this really, I don't know, womanizer, space cowboy, I this is the episode that I think that could stem from. I think there's a little bit of overacting in it, which Shatner has been guilty of, and then there is some romance too in there. But
Sure.
I think when you look at his full body of work, that's not the case. I just think that I think this is one of those few episodes that could stem from that stereotypical thinking of Captain Kirk being this womanizing space cowboy, like I said. So, and then A Piece of the Action, so much fun. That's I think one of the funnest episodes that I've watched so far. It really has a not simple, but a different twist on resolving a diplomatic situation with
Yeah. Yep.
diving into this not undercover character, but the culture that is
Sure.
on this planet that's from 19th century gangsters. It was really fun. I love that episode actually. So, two fun episodes that I think made for a really great week of watching Trek. So.
Yeah, I think that's a run that, and I think right before it was Trouble with Tribbles, right? That was the
Yeah,
last one you watched.
I was
before
just
this
about to say that. It's a good run
Yeah.
too.
So like this last group of three is kind of indicative of the sort of shifting tone of TOS. Like if you go back and you watch the first few episodes of the whole series, it's very heavy. It's very self-serious.
Serious, yeah.
Yeah, it takes itself very seriously, and then as the show sort of evolves and different producers put their mark on it, as you get into like this part of the second season, it becomes a much lighter show.
Yeah.
A little bit more tongue-in-cheek. Much more humor sort of built into the premise of the stories. So yeah, it's an interesting early example of the Swiss Army knife kind of idea. We always talk about that Star Trek can be many things. It's malleable, and the tones can shift series to series, episode to episode, and they all can work really well. So
Yes.
yeah.
What about you? I've seen you're back in the saddle on Twitter.
Yeah, a little bit. I watched two, same as you. I watched The Hunted and High Ground, which are two sort of call them middle of the road, but I think they're good.
Yeah.
I think they're on the upper end of middle of the road. They're both similar, like I said on Twitter. They're both obvious, like social commentary kinds of stories. Hunted sort of being about how to handle our vets, people coming back from war and conflict, how society, handles those people. The High Ground is about terrorism and how history is written by the victor, sort of idea. But both also have a sensitive side to them as well. They're not hardcore necessarily. They're action episodes, but they're dramatic at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I preferred The Hunted. I think The Hunted moves a little bit better. I think,
Mm-hmm.
but I enjoyed them both. I love The High Ground for its showcase of Dr. Crusher, who doesn't get too many episodes per season. I think she's very good,
Mm-hmm.
and I do like the questions that it asks. I think it's kind of bold, and I think both have aged pretty well. I think both have posed questions that are as relevant, if not more relevant, now than they were in 1990 when they aired.
Yeah.
So, two, in the grand scheme of like season 3 of TNG,
Mm-hmm.
you'd probably call it middle of the road. If these 2 episodes took place in season 2 or season 1, they'd be, in the upper echelon. I think. Yeah.
Because
like
I think
highlights.
because they're in season 3, it's kind of like middle of the road. But I think they are 2 really solid episodes for sure.
Yes, agreed. They're hurt by, not even really hurt, but when you compare them to Deja Q and Yesterday's Enterprise and The Defector, which kind of like bracket both of these episodes, they sort of seem more average, I guess. But I think they're strong on their own.
Yeah.
Yep.
So you want to jump into the topic at hand?
Yeah, let's talk about Star Trek love stories, I guess. Yeah, what do you we didn't talk about this at all, really, over the course of this week, like how to talk about it, how to approach this. We just sort of decided on the topic, and we're just going to jump into it and see where it takes us. But like, what are you itching to talk about? Like, what?
Well, you guys can see the title of the video or of the stream. It's episodes, and I think
exactly
that was kind of a tough kind of challenge for me, because I was thinking of moments, right, romantic moments that weren't necessarily in a specific quote unquote romantic episode. Sure. So that was kind of hard to step away from that and say, hey, this is geared towards the whole episode. So that was kind of tough for me. I think it's looking at the structure of how we've kind of done this in the past. We've done, romances as far as, people
like
and pairings. But now we're kind of going a little bit bigger and saying episodes. I think it would be fun maybe next year or later on this year to maybe do just moments like I'm talking about. Because, like, for example, what came to mind, in Star Trek 09, in the turbo lift with Uhura and Spock, it's really romantic moment, but it's not a romantic episode, I would say.
Sure.
So that's where I kind of struggle with this, and my list kind of stays towards the whole episode, not just the moments. So
yeah, there are a ton of moments that are sort of filtered through episodes that don't necessarily, aren't driven by those romantic pairings or stories.
Yeah.
There's a lot of examples of that for sure. Yeah. One of the things that comes to mind for me is I feel like there are like 3 different lanes here of Star Trek romance episodes. You have your obvious pairings, episodes that focus heavily on couples, like Worf and Dax, or like Paris. You have obvious pairings like that, where the stories are built to drive forward those relationships that are defined on screen. And then you have your pseudo relationships, like bubbling under the surface, Janeway Chakotay kinds of things.
Slow burn,
slow burns that maybe never even culminate into anything.
Yeah.
And then in the third lane, you have
one-offs.
Romances with guest stars. So it's kind of a broad canvas where you could kind of individually look at any of those lanes and have a whole conversation. But we're opening this up. It can be anything. It can be anything from any of those things. And to be honest, if you have a moment that you really want to talk about in an episode that might not be a romance episode, I'd love to hear it. This is flexible. We can talk about anything we want.
Yeah.
So, and we have Rob and Ian in the chat, so I'm very eager to hear what you guys have to say. What romance episodes come to mind for you guys? From any of those lanes or a different lane that doesn't fit into any of the ones I just talked about. So when you think about Star Trek romance episodes, moments, whatever sort of comes to mind for you? Like what comes to mind? What's sort of the first thing that pops into your head, or what's the most prominent thing?
I think we should just get this out of the way. I think just because I'm in TOS, I'm going to start right away.
Sure.
The first thing that came to mind was City on the Edge. I think, and this is kind of falls into that kind of one-off category that you were talking about, but I think from the very beginning, I think you can tell that there is some romance there between the two in this specific episode. But yeah, that's the first thing that kind of came to mind as far as romance, and then it kind of trickled from there.
Yeah, I'm on the record as saying many times that it's my favorite episode in all of Star Trek.
Yeah.
And it's, I think my reason for kind of sitting on that perch consistently over the years is not so much that it is a romance, but I think my favorite thing about it is that the romance is connected by Edith Keeler's worldview, which is more suited to the 23rd century. And she, in a nutshell, like if you wanted to explain to somebody, what is Star Trek? Like what does Star Trek do? What does it mean? Like what is it? You could show them Edith Keeler's monologue talking to the mission, and that would pretty well spell it out.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that that's what hooks Kirk. I like that that's the moment that Kirk, is drawn to her. So yeah, for me, that's obviously the one that comes to mind for me too. And it's I think it's unusual. I don't know if it's unusual, but it's notable that it is a one-off. It's not two characters that we spend a lot of time with a lot of investment in their relationship. It's a one-off, single shot, regular character with a guest star that we never see again, kind of story. But it's a tragic one too, which I think leaves a mark. It's a lot of these one-off romances kind of, they happen and then they're over. The two ships go their separate ways, and that's sort of that. But this one has such a definitive ending, and there's such a tragic element to why it can't be. And it's not even just that they're separated by time, that these are two people that are 400 years apart, for all intents and purposes. It's the what has to happen at the end as well. So I think it's like a perfectly constructed science fiction tragic love story, and it's the first thing that came to mind for me too.
Yes. Do you just want to go back and forth, or do you just want to keep?
Yeah, sure. For me, another one that actually came to mind pretty quickly for me is also a TOS one-off, and it's This Side of Paradise. It's I think it's such an integral early episode, first season episode that tells us so much about Spock. I think it's such an easy trap to fall into for people who are just learning about Star Trek, or just have like sort of a baseline, like surface level understanding of what Star Trek is. That Spock, like Vulcans are unemotional. Yeah, they don't have emotion. They don't emote anything. Like that's not true. It's quite the opposite. They feel deeply, and they can't express their emotions. So This Side of Paradise makes it abundantly clear that Spock feels very deeply, and that there's a history there, and that there are people who have come and gone in his life where he has tapped into those sides of himself. So I think it's exploration of Spock's character, and it's sort of locking him in is what makes it stand out to me as a TOS one-off kind of love story.
Yeah, I agree. I think I like that they kind of explore. They're taking out that hardened shell of Spock and kind of showing a different side, which we haven't really seen up to that point. So, definitely.
They do it often. Yeah. After that, they continue to come back to that. They always kind of peel Spock's emotions away. Every like 8 or 9 episodes, you get a scenario where Nimoy gets to play emotional for this reason or that.
Yeah.
Different kinds of things happen. But that's the first time that it really. There's a little bit of it in the Naked Time, really early in the show, for like a moment. Like there's a scene, the disease, the virus is hitting him, and he slips, and then puts it back together. But This Side of Paradise does it for such an extended period of time, and it's such a window into, the inner Spock, that I think is valuable on that level.
I'll do a quick TOS pick just because we've been in TOS.
Sure.
The Enterprise incident, I think, is another one-off thing that, again, it's another kind of Spock kind of romance, but he's really, from what I remember, he's really suave, and he has this Romulan commander that he has to, but yeah, that's another romantic episode. It's also really fun too because he's,
I think, real quick, the fact that it is like I have it on my short list too. It's an episode that does come to mind, but I think it's an episode that if handled differently, if not performed as well, if those two actors, Nimoy and Joanne Linville, who played the Romulan commander, didn't sell the is this attraction real, or are they just trying to one up each other?
Yeah.
Like, playing the game. The fact that the performances are as rich as they are sells that there is something there. There's a definite weird attraction that's happening beneath the surface. But I think if it was lesser actors, it might have come across either false on that level, or it would have come across more clearly. These are two people who are just trying to, toy with each other and try to get information.
But there's a very cat and mouse like quality to the episodes, which I think it makes for great Trek and great Trek romance. So
it's some of my favorite stuff in TOS as a whole. Like, those scenes in that episode are so intoxicatingly weird, and like, what is happening? What are they really feeling? I love watching that episode for that stuff. I mean, the spy stuff with Kirk and stealing the cloaking device, that's all cool and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But what makes that episode great is these things you're talking about. Spock and Romulan commander, I think. It's the major selling point of the episode.
Yeah.
We got Rob in the chat saying Kirk and Edith Keeler are an iconic romance, obviously.
Yeah,
and he's mentioning Lessons, which is definitely one that I'll throw out there now as well. I've talked about that one a good bit over the years on this show. I like that pairing. I like what that episode presents as far as like the workplace romance and the challenges that come along with that. It's controversial if you go on Twitter and you put, like, as many people have done over the years. Not everybody agrees with
but I can see that. I can see it. I can see it for sure. It being a romantic episode.
Sure.
Another TNG episode for me is The Emissary from season 2.
Sure.
I love the Klingon opera-esque style romance in that episode with a really gut check ending. Yeah, that's another TNG for me. Great
Very
episode.
operatic, like you said. In the holodeck where they're loudly like proclaiming their feelings. Like, it's almost Shakespearean. Like it's over the top and it's silly, but it feels appropriate for those characters, for Klingons, to be so like
over the top.
Over the top and
fighting.
I kind of almost appreciate the almost discomfort of watching it. Like it feels like you're watching a intimate moment play out that you're not really supposed to be privy to. Like I like the feeling of these are two literal aliens who are going through a courting, or whatever it is. They have conflicting feelings about what they are and what they should be. But the fact that they're literally not human, and I think that plays into the discomfort of, man, I feel like I shouldn't even be seeing this play out in front of me. Yeah, good pick. For me, another one that kind of going through TNG, I'm going to stick with TNG. It kind of fitting into that second lane I talked about, with sort of things bubbling beneath the surface but never really amounting to much. Attached is Picard and Dr. Crusher.
Crusher.
Being having their minds linked, and hearing each other's thoughts, knowing what each other feels. I think that's such a cool science fiction concept that feels at home in Star Trek, and really plays up what we already kind of know about Crusher and Picard's dynamic. Like it's taking what we already kind of assume is happening there between the two of them and bringing it to the surface, making it something that's tangible and that they have to confront and talk about. And I think 7 years in, with a lot of little moments throughout, like you talked about the Picard and Crusher thing, we've kind of talked about in the past in other episodes. But if you want to talk about like moments, there are a lot of little moments in episodes that aren't really about Picard and Crusher
exactly
that sell their history and sell their sort of, unique dynamic. So I like that 7 years into the show, as the show is sort of getting ready to wrap up, it puts these two characters in a position where they have to admit they're where they come from.
Yeah. I actually don't really have a Picard and Crusher episode just because of that fact, because it's so hard to nail down kind of one episode, but also there's all those. But if you look at moments, like you said, we could talk all day about those. Ian mentioned the episode with Riker and Soren. That's Outcast, and then Rob said that Outcast is great. That's on my list too. Is Outcast definitely I got checked too there. Really sad.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Another strong, like, classic Star Trek premise. That, it's a great one. I like it. It can be controversial at times. Some people don't necessarily think it's aged particularly well, but I've always been a fan of it. I think it's one of Jonathan Frakes' better performances. He gets a reputation like Kirk sometimes that he's kind of an easy conquest for the ladies. But I think his restraint and I think he gives a really touching, sensitive performance in that episode, and it's one of his better moments, I think, in the show.
Yeah, I agree. I think. Do you guys want to move on to Deep Space Nine if you don't have any more TNG picks?
Rob mentioned Half a Life from TNG as well, a little back further with Loxana Troi and Dr. Timothy. That's the episode where they're dealing with this alien culture who effectively controls their population by offing themselves
before it gets bad. Yeah,
exactly. That's a pretty rough episode. I really like it a lot. It's an emotional one though. Like, it really goes for it swings for the fences emotionally. It tries to really tug at the heartstrings. Majel Barrett's very, she's a character that swings for the fences in every way. She's very extroverted, very very loud person who's not afraid to express what she's feeling, and that lends itself to, in a situation like this, she would really,
but I think
be abrasive with how she's feeling.
At least for me, she's feeling how the audience is feeling. Like, what? Yeah. This is
crazy.
Yeah, this is crazy. Loud and above the normal reaction. So I think, that's a great pick, actually, Rob.
Yeah, and Rob says
Ian. Sorry. Yeah. Or, I don't know.
Rob mentioned Half a Life.
Okay, cool.
Cost of Living, Majel Barrett. There's a scene where Majel Barrett's performing as Loxana, talking about loss, and just a few months after Gene Roddenberry had passed away. So there's a really meta sequence in that episode.
Yeah,
for sure. Yep. But yeah, Deep Space Nine.
I had to look up the titles of these because I remember what happens in the episode. I just couldn't remember the titles. So His Way, I think, was one of the first ones that came to mind, and then also Change of Heart were kind of the two big ones. But I had to remember which. I didn't remember the names because it's been a while since I've seen Deep Space Nine. But I remember more or less what happened in the episode.
Right.
I think those two kind of come to mind for me. Yeah.
His Way is uniquely Deep Space Nine. It introduces James Darren as Vic Fontaine. I love the way it uses that character to draw out, Odo's introverted feelings. Really, really good. A lot of payoff there with the slow build up with those two characters.
But
that been building for a long time.
I think the twist, though, I think really makes that episode because,
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a really good twist in it. I don't even.
That's why I'm trying not to.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to.
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really good. Change of Heart's another really good one. Another really relatable kind of. Not so much. I wouldn't call it relatable, but it's a sort of a softball down the middle as far as the concept of two officers who are romantically involved on a mission and sort of having to choose between duty and the relationship, putting Worf in a position who I think is uniquely suited for that, who's such a duty person. I think he's the natural choice that it's the hardest for him to walk away from the mission to save, the person he loves. But he doesn't. So, I think that's I think it's a good episode, and I think it says a lot about Worf's development over not even just Deep Space Nine, but going even back into TNG. Like we see his arc pretty clearly in that episode.
Yeah, because I think it's just starting with TNG. I think he makes that in Emissary. He makes this big proclamation of love, but then he gets denied, and then he kind of shells up a little bit. He's always been about duty, like you said. So it's kind of nice to see him kind of open up.
Sure.
I think it's at least that's what I kind of remember in the episode. It's like Dax is hurt and he has to choose.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. One that came to mind for me from Deep Space Nine, different relationship. Deep Space Nine has a ton of these. Right in the chat, we have Rob mentioning Brian's is a really that's one where there are episodes for sure, but that's another one where there are moments even more so, like in other episodes where they're the presentation of a marriage, which is kind of in Star Trek, like a long-standing marriage. But one from a different standpoint for me is Indiscretion, which is an episode most people think of as a Dukat Kira on a mission kind of story, but the B plot of that episode is Cassidy Yates wanting to get quarters on Deep Space Nine and Sisko's resistance and discomfort when taking that step. It's a big step. That's about 15 times in that episode. It's a big step. And that's got to be certainly relatable. That taking that big step, and it's also unique to Sisko having lost his wife and being the captain on the space station. The optics of having a significant other who lives on the station is a different look than what he had before. Yeah. So I like the way that it presents his sort of slow walk to getting comfortable with that idea, and the challenges that walk brings between him and Cassidy. So I like that as a different spin, uniquely Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine as a little bit more of a serialized show where they stay in one place. So I feel like that lends itself to stories like that. I don't know how well none of the other shows could even really do that. Where the civilian wants to kind of put down roots on a space station, which presents a challenge like on a ship where you're constantly moving around. Yeah, it's a different kind of thing. So uniquely Deep Space Nine story.
I had to look this one up too, but it's Rejoined. It's kind of Dax kind of falls for Curzon's ex kind of, and I think it was kind of a different take on not just romance, but kind of exploring the host, that kind of backstory, how the challenges of the new host of Jadzia, being influenced by its past host.
Past relationship.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, Rejoined's a great one. Another one that really takes advantage of the. It's not just a cookie cutter romance. Like it's a romance that can only work for that character. Yeah. It's Dax and Trill really, but really really strong episode on a lot of different levels, and it's a fan favorite for a lot of reasons that are all very valid. in the chat we have what else do we have for Deep Space Nine? Ian says any episode with Miles and Julian in the Holosuite romance.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't argue with that. Kira has some good moments with Bareil. There's an episode called Crossfire where Kira is in a relationship with not Bareil but Shakar, who two very different characters, and they're kind of interchangeable to me for some reasons, but they're different relationships. Kira's with Shakar. Shakar is a target, I believe. Like he's on the station. He's first minister, and he's a target, an assassination target, and Odo has to be like their protective, the Secret Service basically, following Shakar around, and obviously Odo has feelings for Kira, so he's in this position where he has to, have a window into their intimate moments and, be with them through thick and thin, which is obviously uncomfortable for Odo. There's a lot of cool stuff in that episode that I think is, well done.
Yeah.
Deep Space Nine's got a ton of them because there are so many long-standing relationships.
Yeah.
And, it's a show that's built around the characters, and there are a lot of there are a lot of love stories, but there are a lot of slow burn kind of relationships as well that build up over the series, which lend themselves to conversations like this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Rob's mentioning Lita and Rom getting together in Dr. Bashir, I presume, I believe it was, which is Robert Picardo's in that episode as Dr. Zimmerman.
Yeah.
And also mentions life support, which is the end for Bareil. That's a tough
Strong
episode. That's got some really meaty stuff in it.
Yep.
I like that one a lot. I know it's kind of a mixed bag for some people. I hear you, Dan, saying that you're a fan too, but it can be a controversial episode, but I've always really liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it every time I go back to it. Garrick and Zial. So yeah, Deep Space Nine, there is a ton to talk about. And I'm looking forward to you diving into it. I'm looking forward to you getting to Deep Space Nine and rediscovering with fresh eyes all this stuff.
Yep.
Some Voyager.
Okay. I gotta prepare myself. This is the one that I have 3 picks. I tried to do an even amount of picks for. I'll start off with kind of. I'll just start off with Day of Honor. That's just kind of. Voyager has a lot of moments, like we've kind of talked about, but there are some. Episodes too. I'll get into some episodes, but Day of Honor, it I don't know. It kind of goes in and out of. Is it just the moment that makes that episode? Is it a romantic episode? So I'll do Day of Honor. I'll have to mention that. Resolutions. That to me is a romantic episode.
For sure.
And then probably the first one that came to mind, and is probably my favorite Voyager episode, if not my favorite episode of Star Trek ever, is Someone to Watch Over Me. I think I'm like stumbling over my speech because I'm just so excited. But this episode, to me, is a romantic episode. It's about a date and getting ready for the date, and the date doesn't turn out as well as it should, and then romance ensues and heartbreak.
Sure.
So
and heartbreak.
I think there's a little bit of everything in this. I think there's romance, obviously, but there's also some great comedy moments in it that I think make it kind of set it apart from the other episodes that I kind of mentioned as far as romantic stuff. What could have been, I don't know what else to say about it.
It's all true. I had all 3 of those written down. So Day of Honor for sure is an episode that never ceases to impress. I think it's aged very, very well.
Yeah.
Production value of it, the ambitiousness of putting them in EV suits in space, and having that be where they connect finally and admit where they stand. I think that's great because of the build up, because it had been slowly ramped up to over the last season, maybe season and a half, or so. Resolutions for sure, like you said, we've talked about that episode a good bit. It's a natural.
But I like resolutions because there's this underlying romantic quality to it. Like there's not a typical lovey-dovey exchange. I mean, there is a few moments of, romance, but it's
very restrained. It's not. You have two people that are in different emotional and mental places. Like you have one who's kind of ready to go there and is kind of in a place where they could foresee living a happy life for the rest of time for them, and you have one who's just not even really in a position
left
to
field
think about it. It's not even there, and it's not. I don't ever really feel like it's a lack of desire. I don't think she's in a position to allow herself to get there yet. She has given up hope for what for an alternative outcome yet. I think she could get there. I think she knows she could get there, but she's just not there yet, where Chakotay is. So my favorite thing about that episode is that very thing. It's that it's not just okay, we're just going to put them on this planet here and give them this scenario and it's all going to blossom and it's going to be a thing. Like I like it's not that easy. Like these are two different people with two different sensibilities and have two different sets of hopes and dreams and expectations and
but I think it's true to their characters, right? Because Janeway has always been this hopeful beacon of light through the whole series, right? And Chakotay on the other hand, he's always been loyal to her, and you can definitely see that. And it's not just this episode, right? It's leading up to it and post this episode is the same.
Right.
So, but yeah,
I think Janeway feels more of a sense of urgency to getting the ship home and overseeing that happening, protecting the crew, because it's her choice to be there. Basically, she made a call that put them in this position, so that puts her in a unique spot. And then Chakotay is, I think he wants to get home, but I think it's a far less all-encompassing feeling for him. I think he's okay. He's not like I've talked about before. I think he feels like his crew is in the best position that they could be in. And he knows that he might not necessarily be going back to happy times. He's Maquis, his crew is Maquis, fugitives. Who knows what awaits them back home if they were to get back home. They're two different people. They have two completely different outlooks on life and where they are, circumstances. And I like that it throws them together, and it doesn't offer any easy, outcomes. It's going to be a complicated dynamic moving forward. And it gets cut off, they get picked up, and they save the day like they always do. But had it played out differently, and they were going to live on that planet for the end of for the rest of the time, it wasn't going to be an easy path forward, and it wasn't going to happen quickly. If it happened at all, who knows? Yeah. And then Someone to Watch Over Me is an obvious. I know that's a big favorite for you. It's a big favorite for me too. It's definitely it's a successful comedy. It's a successful romance. It really plays it plays to the Doctor's strengths as a character. It plays to Seven's strengths as a character. It's essentially a retelling of My Fair Lady, Pygmalion, which is the classic movies, classic stories. A well-mannered, rich person, trying to bring forward a rough and tumble kind of character into, civilized society and being able to operate in that kind of setting, like the Doctor's trying to do with Seven. It's a retelling of a classic story, but it fits perfectly into Star Trek and Voyager specifically because of who these two characters are and how they're equipped to do it. So it's one of my favorites. It's one of the most rewatchable episodes, I think, because of its humor, because of its levity, and it's such a unique animal in Voyager. It takes itself so lightly, and it's so not urgent. Like there's not a threat that's like insurmountably huge. It's so laid back and casual. Definitely a highlight for Voyager.
But the twist at the end too is similar to the Deep Space Nine episode, His Way, but it's kind of the opposite, right? It's
the opposite, right? Yeah, it's a different ending.
Yeah.
Yep, it's true. In the chat, we have quite a few different takes. We have Dave Honor. We have resolutions obviously being discussed. Life Signs, the Doctor and Denara Pell.
Oh yeah.
Which is a kind of a sets up some of what we get in resolutions with that disease.
Yeah.
That's a good episode. Seven and Chakotay lends itself to a whole discussion. Threshold.
Yeah.
That's a romance with babies. Unusual.
Yeah.
Counterpoint is a great one, similar to the Enterprise incident, with characters that there's an obvious attraction there that they're sort of struggling with and not wanting to.
Another great twist, though.
Completely embrace another great twist. I love that episode so much. But it's two characters that are trying to one up each other at the same time.
Yep.
Kind of know it. It's very that and the Enterprise incident kind of go hand in hand as a good 1-2 punch double feature.
Oh, I forgot about Counterpoint.
Oh, it's so good.
So good.
Lots of Harry's failed romance.
Oh man,
Z's favorite son.
The list goes on.
The list goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chakotay built Janeway a bath in resolutions.
Oh yeah.
Infamously. Yeah. So a lot of good discussion on Voyager choices. Like Deep Space Nine, I think there's a lot to choose from there because of the different pairings that are either kind of official, like Tom and B'Elanna, and then they have these other kind of flirtations that never really amount to much.
Yeah.
In a practical, like in a tangible way, like Janeway Chakotay, like the Doctor in Seven. So there's a lot to play with, moment wise, episode wise.
Yeah.
Enterprise. Anything come to mind in Enterprise for you?
Not really episodes. I think there's, again, if we keep falling into this trap of, man, there's some really romantic moments.
Sure.
In Enterprise, and then just going beyond Enterprise and into the Kelvin timeline stuff, and then Discovery, and then Picard. Obviously, this new era, this second golden era of Trek, I think has some really strong moments, at least for me.
Yeah, for me, I kind of agree. Pinning down exact episodes isn't as easy here. For me, I went with E Squared, which is a late third season in the middle of that late run to the end of the Xindi arc. That's the episode where there's a future ship, a future version of the Enterprise with descendants populating it, and one of the captain of the future Enterprise is the offspring of Trip and T'Pol. Lorien is his name, and that kind of brings to the surface Trip and T'Pol's kind of their feelings. I mean, this is very early experience together, and there are some good scenes where they're talking about, what could be, what might not be possible.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a teeing up what comes later in the series at the very end with the idea of a child between a human and a Vulcan.
Yeah. 2 episodes just came to mind, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. What's the episode where the What If episode when Archer loses his memory?
Oh yeah,
Twilight. That's to me that's a romantic.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of the what if. I think that, and I think there was a lot of what if Archer and T'Pol got together. I think this is that exploration of that, but also I'm terrible with episode names. But the episode where Trip, I don't know if it's romance, but it teaches the alien that is a third gender, that has a third gender. Cogender, yeah. I don't know if that's a romance thing or what that is, but that also has like a really gut check moment at the end too. But,
for sure.
I could be way off with the romance.
Yeah, like you said, I don't know that there's necessarily evidence that Trip is romantically interested in her as opposed to just wanting to help her, but there are sequences where you could see, like in a a set of circumstances could draw these two people together. But Twilight, for absolute sure, there's that great moment where Archer asks, like, just how far has it gone? And
Yeah.
looks at like cuts before the answer. That is great.
Yeah.
Great edit.
Yeah.
It leads, that perfectly sets up, the question, and doesn't give us an answer. So Twilight's a great choice. And the way Trip and T'Pol sort of plays out in Enterprise makes it difficult to necessarily pin down an episode, because they kind of it almost feels like it's Tom and B'Elanna, but they never quite have their like Day of Honor kind of moment.
Right.
It becomes a thing. Like they embrace it and they move forward. Like we never quite get there. It's a lot of the early stuff between Tom and B'Elanna. It's like the Blood Fever kind of stage where it's the feeling drops there, and there are things happening, but it never becomes an out in the open kind of a thing that they fully embrace for a whole lot of different reasons. It's a different thing than the dynamic. But I think it makes it difficult to pin down and say, okay, that's the one from that show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Anything else from the Kelvin timeline? You mentioned at the very Spock a horror moment in 09. Are there things you want to talk about?
Man, that's I mean, just the romance between. I don't know if I want to go there. I kind of want to say. Just thinking about it, I kind of want to save that. Maybe for another episode, because we are approaching our hour mark. But I will say a few more little things from chat. Ian mentions Calypso. It didn't come to mind, but that's a great romantic episode for sure.
It is.
Yep.
100% agree.
And then Rob mentions going back to TNG. In theory, is an interesting romance episode for Data. Definitely would agree there.
True. Yep. Star Trek goes romantic comedy in that one. That's an interesting episode that I've always liked.
Yeah.
Ian mentioned the episode where Trip gets pregnant, unexpected. Mm-hmm. There is some romance in the early stages.
Yeah, there is.
It's a controversial one, and then Rob just mentioned Colmitz, Stamets and Culber and Discovery. There's obviously a lot of stuff there.
Again, moments. I think there's
moments. Mm-hmm.
Maybe the episode where they save. Go ahead.
Culber, that one. There's some big stuff in that.
Yeah.
If you were going to pin it down to an episode for those two, it's probably that one.
Yeah.
But I also think about from Discovery. I think about if Magic to Make the Same Man Go Mad. I like the way that Burnham's attraction to Ash Tyler is kind of weaved into the Harry Mudd shenanigans.
Yeah.
That's like it's sort of integral to the plot. It's the only way to kind of get. Only she can kind of have that conversation with Ash Tyler without Ash Tyler like blowing them off. To sell the absurdity of what's happening. Mm-hmm. I love the little scene where Stamets is dancing with Burnham and kind of talking about opening up and having to be yourself. Like there's really good stuff that I really like a lot. And there is a romantic element to that episode that's kind of there from the beginning to end.
About that, the party and
the party, yep.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in that. And then, if memory serves, of course, is sort of the
I forgot. Man.
Yeah, there's some really rich stuff in that with Pike and Vina it goes back to the very, very beginning of Star Trek.
I was about to say,
and like the original Star Trek romance with those two characters. So yeah, they're the two from Discovery, and then like you mentioned, Saints of Infection with Stamets. Burnham saving Culber from the Mycelial Network is another big one. And Calypso is a great call. I mean, we already mentioned that from Rob, but Calypso's we're on the record having loved that a lot.
I think that might be my favorite short Trek, but again, that's
my favorite. Sure.
That's another topic for another day.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any Star Trek content that you'd like to mention?
Speaking of memory serves, I've talked about it a couple of times. There's a little talk about YouTube channel called Trek Favorites. He's like a tech blogger. I can't even say, I don't know his name off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But I'm so proud, and every once in a while I see a video pop up on my feed, and he has a guest on, and they talk about an episode that person loves. And the episode that I just watched this week was a person talking about If Memory Serves, from Discovery, which is my favorite episode of Discovery. It's my favorite episode from this era of Star Trek still. Yeah. This new stuff, Picard and Discovery. It is the high point for me. So I'd recommend that, and I'd recommend that show more broadly. What about you?
I'm trying to think of I'm not seeing any that I've listened to this week. I think I'll just take the cop out with Core Setting. Thad and I had a great time doing a commentary. It might be a little slow just because there's lots of silence, just because that was Thad and I's first time watching it. So if you want like a companion, maybe more of like, not like a commentary, but more of a companion where, hey, I'm watching this and this is also playing too, I think it would work great for that. And then later on today, Bill mentioned a little double feature we're having. Yes, we have a Trek Live, but then we have Core Setting at 11 my time, which is 2, which is
just 2 my time,
yeah,
7 our guest time.
Yeah.
Ian is going to join us to talk about the latest in Picard.
There is going to be a lot of Star Trek content this weekend to catch up on, to watch, to take part in. So definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Agreed.
Well, we will be back next week. Again, I think with a guest on Core Setting, and then also an episode of Trek Live. So another packed weekend coming up. But yeah.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. You guys know the drill. Discussion doesn't have to stop here. Facebook, Twitter, Discord, kind of the big 3 to kind of keep the conversation going. Definitely check out Twitter, probably is the best way, and Discord. Discord is a great, I think every week we kind of have a little talk about, the episode of Picard. That's nice to be able to get into, not just the masses on Twitter, where you can kind of see some, up and down, maybe mixed reviews. But the Discord server is really, really positive geared towards just talking about the episode. So definitely check that out. And if you guys want to join, DM Bill.
Yeah, DM me if you're interested in joining our Discord server. If you're not already there, we'll be happy to get you an invite. And come talk Star Trek anytime with people from all over the world, really. We have people from the UK, people from the US. So maybe not all over the world, but in those 2 countries. But yeah, it's an active place to just talk Star Trek with like-minded people. So
we're gonna be signing off Trek Live until next week, but again, we'll be back. So I can't say hours. See you next week because I will see you in a couple hours. So all right, thanks for watching, guys.
Look forward to it.